Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the 5 greatest Janacek recordings. Oh, this was fun. You know, just a few decades ago, a list like this would have been impossible, or if not impossible, people would have wondered why we even bothered, because Janacek was such a minor figure. Well, now, thanks largely to the efforts of Charles Mackerras, Janacek is almost a household name and certainly regarded as the greatest Czech composer after Dvorak, I would think, and one of the great opera composers of the 20th century, and just an amazingly individual personality, despite the fact that, operas aside, his output was rather limited. He didn't become the Janacek we know and love until he was about 50. He was a very, very late developer. And when he finally evolved his mature style, music just poured out of him. It was really kind of amazing. Fascinating story, actually. And now he's recorded constantly, and rightly so, because his music is so individual and so extraordinarily expressive, so spontaneously passionate. It's amazing. And more than that, it allows a huge range of interpretation. Just amazing, actually, from one performance to the next, because there's just so much emotional energy in it, and how you contain it, you know, is something that's an endless source of fascination to me anyway, and listening to various recordings of his works. So I know you're going to have your 5 greatest Janacek recordings, and here are the 5 greatest Janacek recordings, objectively, of course. Number 1, Sinfonietta and Taras Bulba with Raphael Kubelik, the Bavarian Radio Symphony on Deutsche Grammophon. You know, this was one of the earlier recordings of Janacek stuff. It was available when very little else was. And most people had no idea what to make of it. And I remember finding it, you know, in the record store when I was in college. You know, you would go through, in those days, you know, classical sections were often organized by label and by catalog number, not by composer. That came later, and I actually think that was still the smarter way to do it, because it was easier to keep stock, and you could browse through an entire label's catalog and find interesting stuff that you might not have known existed. And this was one of the things that we didn't know existed. And it had this weird cover, and you know, and I said to my friends at the record store, "What the hell is this?" And they said, "Well, try it." And I did, and it was amazing. And I realized right away that the Sinfonietta was the song Knife Edge by Emerson, Lake and Palmer, so that helped. I mean, thank God for Emerson, Lake and Palmer. If it weren't for them, so many of us would not have encountered some very, very interesting classical music, contemporary classical music too. But the Sinfonietta, for 14 trumpets and orchestra all told, there are 9 of them, plus 2 bass trumpets in the initial fanfares that also close the work, plus 3 more in the orchestra. Oh, wow. What a piece of music that is. It's a little symphony. It's only 22 minutes long. It's massive. It's huge. It's all over the place. Taras Bulba is a symphonic poem, of course, about the Cossack of the same name in the movie with Yul Brynner and Tony Curtis, I think, which also has a fabulous score by Franz Waxman. But Janacek's is a 3-movement, basically symphony kind of thing, that has orchestral textures that are it's just like nobody else. You know, I mean, the second movement begins with a harp, with that ostinato and the harp of all instruments, and just slashing chords on the violins. Ya, yum, 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 yum. And, you know, with the harp doing its thing, there's nothing like it. Really, it's incredible. It's got the organ at the end and bells banging around, and oh my God. And this performance by Kubelik has withstood the test of time. Both of them have. Kubelik's Janacek was totally unsentimental, which is the way you got to do it, because Janacek's endings are abrupt, his textures are rough, his transitions are non-existent. He lets the music shock. And I say that's unsentimental. That's not really the right word. But he doesn't gild the lily, let's put it that way. He just comes straight at you and lets the music hit you with full force. And the Bavarian radio engineers made for glorious sonics. Some people, fetch about the brass intonation and the fanfares of the Sinfonietta, but that doesn't bother me a bit. People who bitch about brass intonation need better things to do with their lives. So it's a stunning recording, and it's really the linchpin, I think, of any serious Janacek collection, certainly of the orchestral pieces. Next, string quartets. Oh, the string quartets. There are only 2 of them. You wish he had written like 50. I mean, they are so exciting and so fascinating. They're so full of interesting textures. He has the string players playing in harmonics and ponticello, and as usual with Janacek's own, quixotic sense of musical form, which has absolutely no rules whatsoever. There's no reason why they hang together as well as they do. They just do. They're both programmatic. The first is based on Tolstoy's Kreutzer Sonata about, basically domestic violence, the abuse of women. The second is intimate letters to his late love, Kamila Stoslova, who, basically didn't return his affection. She had no idea why he was chasing her around. But he wrote dozens or hundreds of love letters to her, and they are embodied in this quartet, which is just an absolute quartet orgasm. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. It's just overflowing with heaps of passion. It's unbelievable, and stunning. And to play these pieces, the string quartet has to basically, let down their inhibitions and go completely crazy on the music. And the Panocha quartet on Supraphon does that. So do a lot of other quartets, too. I mean, they get it. The Czech quartets, of course, have the music in their blood. It's part of their tradition of quartet performance. So they tend to approach these pieces with a certain idiomatic flair, but others have done extremely well, too. And you will tell me which ones those are, possibly, in your own lists. Next, the piano works with Rudolf Firkušný. Now, Firkušný studied with Janacek, at least for a little while. He describes those lessons as kind of strange because Janacek was anything but a conventional teacher. And his own piano works, well, there aren't many of them. But again, they're extraordinarily individual. Perhaps the most interesting piano piece he wrote was a cycle called In the Mists, which is a dark and impressionistic kind of series of movements. But there's On an Overgrown Path, and a 2-movement sonata, which Janacek destroyed, but they salvaged a couple of the movements, and so they get performed. And then there's the works for piano and ensemble, the Capriccio and the Concertino for piano left hand, which are really strange and very, very different. And along with the Sinfonietta and Taras Bulba, Firkušný recorded those ensemble pieces with Raphael Kubelik, and that was sort of the other Janacek that was available for a long time outside of Supraphon recordings, which were only spottily distributed in the West at the time. And, Firkušný is absolutely fabulous. He remade some of that music for RCA later in his career, but the Deutsche Grammophon recordings are the ones to go for. Those are the reference recordings, and they really haven't been bettered. They're astonishing, and as with all of Janacek's quirky and original inspirations, the piano works sound like nobody else. And that's not easy to do with a piano. It really isn't. Next, the Glagolitic Mass, Janacek's late choral masterpiece. What an incredible piece of music that is. And here we talk about, the recording is Karl Ancerl with the Czech Philharmonic and local forces. A remarkable recording for many reasons. First of all, it's sacred music, which, Ancerl insisted on doing, even though the regime at the time, the communist regime in the Czechoslovakia then, was, opposed to any sort of expression of religious sentiment. Although Janacek's own description of the piece had that he was neither a believer nor old. It was supposed to be a sort of pantheistic exordium set to the text that happens to be the Roman Catholic Mass in Old Church Slavonic. So it's like all of Janacek. It's an indefinable work. And Ancerl's performance has fabulous choral singing, first of all, great soloist, terrific devotion and dedication, as did his, Dvorak Requiem and the other sacred pieces that he managed to get done, which is fascinating because remember, he was Jewish. He was doing all of this music at the time, and it was really a tightrope walk with the regime before he finally defected to the West, I think right after the invasion of Czechoslovakia, right, in 1968, somewhere around there. And his Janacek recordings are all wonderful. They really are. There's also a Sinfonietta and Taras Bulba, but the Glagolitic Mass is the jewel in the crown. And last but not least, of course, we have to do some operas, and they have to be Charles Mackerras. They've got to be. And my pick is the Cunning Little Vixen. First of all, because Mackerras went back to Janacek's original scoring, which is so much more edgy and colorful than the Václav Talich, revamp. And all the Supraphon recordings in one way or another diddled Janacek's orchestration. And Mackerras presents the unvarnished truth, which is fabulous. And second of all, the opera is the craziest thing Janacek ever wrote. I mean, it's based on a comic strip. All the characters are animals. It's the only opera where the lead soprano gets to basically, crap on another one of the characters. Then she gets killed and made into a muff in the third act. But it's not a sad work. It's about the constant renewal of nature and the cycle of life. And it's enchanting. It's absolutely enchanting. It's one of the most amazing pieces of music. It's so moving. I mean, it's incredible. At the very end, when the wood guy, the guy who takes care of the woods, basically the gamekeeper, whatever he's called, finds the child of the vixen, captures the child of the vixen, and then they talk to him, and he sort of understands what it's saying, and he lets his gun fall, and he just is surrounded by the forest and the animals, and oh my God, I cry just thinking about it. I'm getting misty, and it's not because of the music's sentimentality. It's because of its emotional truth. Its tendency. It just goes right to the heart of things, and it's incredible music, absolutely incredible music. But all of his operas are. They really are. But this one is, I think, especially extraordinary. It would make a fabulous animated cartoon. Opera. I wish somebody would have done it or do it, but anyway, it would. So there you have it. The 5 greatest Janacek recordings. Please give me your list as well. He's a composer who is endlessly fascinating and perpetually moving and just incredibly great. Unbelievably great. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.